What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. So there's so much going on right now with Africa and a lot of conversations, especially with the AES or the Alliance of Sahelian States. I thought it'd be really good to just level set, and get an understanding or a consensus of what actually is going on in Africa from a geopolitical point of view. So what I did was I went through all 54 countries of Africa and I kind of bucketed a grouping of 9 categories for these 54 countries to maybe give some alignment and symbology to what these countries are and how they relate to each other. So I have my 54 countries, I have my 9 buckets, and I wanted to make it a little bit fun. So I went ahead and I associated with an animal, African animal, to basically illustrate the nature and relationship of these regions, of these countries, with Africa and the world. So I want to start off with the first category, which is going to be the Arab states. So the Arab states are going to be primarily made up of the predominantly Arab or Islamic states of North Africa. These countries, when you take it into account their Arab and Amazigh or Berber population, these are countries that are 96% and above non-sub-Saharan Africa. Those countries are going to be Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya. So once again, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt. So these are those countries, and historically, these countries have been north facing. So what you're going to have is you're going to have these Arab states, these Islamic states on the northern shore of Africa, right? They have been Mediterranean facing, and then you're going to have this gap of the Sahara Desert, which almost acts like an inland ocean separating sub-Saharan or Sahelian Africa. So most of these populations are going to be on the north coast. Now, I call this group, the animal that I use to represent this group, I call it the hippos. And the reason why I call it the hippos is because hippos are big, and these countries are big. In fact, Algeria, I believe, is the largest country in Africa. But really, what I mean is big as in their presence. This was the tip of the spear for Islam, or a form of Islam, entering into the Africa, the other form being on the East Coast as well. But Islam has had a big presence in Africa, brought in from the Arabian Peninsula. And so not all these countries geographically big, such as your Libyas, your Algerias, and Egypt, and on the smaller end you have your Tunisia. And I want to make sure you know in my categories, this is a spectrum. So there will be extreme large cases or extreme small cases, but the categorization is apt. So what you have is these countries doesn't have a continuous relationship with sub-Saharan Africa. I find these countries to have a little bit more of an antagonistic relationship. A lot of slave trading was done in this, or enslavement was done in this area of Africa. So, whether you're looking at sports, maybe the most recent World Cup, or and you'll see the relationship. It's almost as if being a sub-Saharan in Africa, in these countries, are, instead of appreciated or acknowledged, it is tolerated, if that. So a lot of people are surprised when I constantly say, the largest ethnic group, consistent ethnic group in Africa is actually Arab. When you look at it, when you start breaking it apart and remove the nationality, remove the state, and start looking at ethnic group, when you look at that continuous group of one people, you're going to have a massive amount of Arab. So, like 2 out of 5 Arabs, I believe, in the world are in Egypt, with a population of over 100 million people. So this is those fun facts and understanding the relationship between this group, or as I call them, the hippos. And another thing, hippos are big, but they are dangerous. They are dangerous, and these are some of the most militarized and technologically advanced countries in Africa as well. So when you put that together with this introduction of a different culture, its Mediterranean view is going to be different than what's behind it on the sub-Saharan side. It's not going to be necessarily as integrated in the sub-Saharan Africa as they are focused on Europe trade or their relationship with the Middle East. This is what I call the Arab states or the hippos. Now, beneath the hippos or south of the hippos, you have the Sahel states. Now, the Sahel states is going to be the front line between this Islamic world meeting the African or sub-Saharan African world. It's kind of that the world from the outside meeting the African from the inside. And these states I associated with the animal, the warthog. And the reason why I associated with the warthog is because a warthog doesn't just thrive in its environment, but it kind of survives the environment. It lives a life of conflict. When you see a warthog, it's constantly scurrying, attacking, being attacked, trying to survive out there, trying to save his family. It's constantly under duress, and that's the life of warthog. Just like these Sahelian states, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, Sudan, Mauritania. Now, the interesting thing about these countries is they've all suffered some form of internal conflict due to Islamic extremism. And the other part is they're all Islamic countries. So enough is never enough. So they're predominantly Islamic countries. So it's very interesting the stress and duress that these countries are constantly in between. We need not say more about the conflicts of the RSF against the forces in Sudan and the splitting of Sudan between Sudan and South Sudan. Uh, a lot of the three major Sahelian states that are in alliance, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, make up these groups. This area in particular has large demographic pressures. And one thing that goes unnoticed is if you look at the map, these countries economically aren't the problem. Their problem is political. Who runs the show? And that has been the major issue that's lost. You would think these countries are impoverished or under duress. But what it is these countries are constantly putting through a stress test, life of a warthog, um, high stress, constantly frenzied. This is the life of this Sahel region. And you'll see it, this theme continuously reveal itself within this region. The next group I want to talk about is my anchors. So I call them the anchors because these countries themselves aren't inherently powerful, but what they are lily pads. These are my island nations, the nations that have a strategic location, which in alliance with outside powers can give you access to the continent of Africa, right? One of the things I constantly talk about is how islands, especially during colonialism, but islands historically are used as lily pads, right? Because what happened is you have a foreign power and they need to get close, right? Because force is felt strongest at its source. So a foreign power needs to get closer to project. So one of the problems that America would have, such as Afghanistan, they needed forward operating bases. You need a place to replenish, support supply chains, etc. And this is what islands provide. This is why the Spaniards, when they came to the New World, they needed the Bahamas, they needed Hispaniola, they needed Cuba before they could attack the Aztecs in Mexico, right? They need the lily pad. They need a place that's small, non-threatening, they can quickly take over, set up base, and then project force from. And this really is what these anchors do. They really provide an anchor for outside powers, and they're indicative. They're indicative because a lot of these anchor nations, and a lot of African nations are these anchor nations, but um, the reason why that's so important is their trade flows. That's one way I always recognize a hegemon. You can see a hegemon if you look at American neighbors. Uh, their top trading partner usually includes the United States. Same thing with China. If you look at their neighbors, their top trading partner usually includes China. And the reason why is because hegemons exert a large economic footprint and they bring in um, like gravitational pull, like the magnetic pull of the moon to the earth. Like they bring in these surrounding nations that they produce so much and they buy so much that their surrounding nations are kind of sucked into this whirlpool, right? And what you'll see is a lot of these countries in this anchor, their largest trading partner isn't necessarily aren't usually African. They're from outside. And this has been your great bellwether of African performance. When these nations, when their top trading partners are consistently African states, this is when you know Africa is on the ascent. Otherwise, Africa is in trouble because why are countries farther away trading more with these pivotal strategic locations? So I call these anchor states. We have Cape Verde, Comoros, Swaziland or Eswatini, Lesotho, Seychelles, Djibouti, Mauritius, Rwanda, Burundi, the Gambia, Malawi, Madagascar, Namibia. Now, that was a nice list, and it seems diverse, but if we were looking into the statistics on these guys, you can see the alignment. Like you'll have a great economic performance like Rwanda, but how much Rwanda economic performance is there without the combo? What they're out there supposed looting or these resource extraction. Rwanda is famous for selling all types of resources that aren't necessarily indigenous to Rwanda. Some people say it's from the Congo because where are they getting it from otherwise? But tiny mountainous Rwanda, they don't have the economic base or any critical resource that would justify its economic growth on its own. Another one, Namibia, massive country, right? You'll think, how can Namibia be an anchor? Well, Namibia is really a city state with a large interior desert, right? Like the Namib and the Kalahari Desert. But it's a country, despite its massive size, of only 3 million people. So these countries really do provide a platform because they're too weak really to um, stand up or deny a foreign power. The largest one for me to classify on this list was Madagascar. They have a population of over 30 million. But even they, I cannot find have the intrinsic resources and capital to truly project on their own. Their greatest utility would be in partnership with the outside, and their greatest utility and their greatest threat will be in partnership with the outside force. Now, the animal associated with these anchor nations would be vultures, and the reason why I chose vultures is uh, because symbolic. They're always present, right? They're always where the action is at because their true value is a relationship to their action. So they live off of the activity of the herd moving. But at the same time, they are a signal to predators because the predators see a vulture in the sky, they know their prey somewhere near. So just that ever-present nature of the bird in the sky, that eye in the sky, that these anchors provide, because these are all over Africa, surrounding all types of countries. And if a foreign power, which they did during colonialism, and then globalism, is a foreign power is able to anchor themselves within one of these countries, they're able to exert undue influence far outside their own region. All right. So moving on, the next segment I have is going to be what I like to call the low convergence states. These are crocodiles, and I call them crocodiles because they're awkward, not that mobile, but extremely chaotic and dangerous, right? And these two states are Eritrea and Somalia, and I really like this dichotomy because they're completely two different places, same results. Little to no economic growth, activities, or opportunities for their people. But one is anarchic, based around clan system. This is Somalia. We don't even know if Somalia is a state yet. We don't know how many states exist in Somalia. Whether we're talking Puntland, whether we're talking Somaliland. Is there really even a unified Somalia? I can't tell you, but I can tell you this: it's freaking dangerous there. And the same thing with Eritrea. This is a place, some will call it North Korea, but it's completely different in Somalia, where Somalia is anarchy and crazy, made up of all these powerful clans conflicting with each other. Eritrea is consolidated, it's centralized, it's just really backwards. These countries have potential to do things. Somalia as a whole is the longest coastline in Africa and it has great strategic position on the whole horn. Same thing with Eritrea right there on the Red Sea. But due to their own inertia or their own systems in place, they are basically regressing their countries and preventing them from or inhibiting their countries from truly fulfilling their full capacity. So I wanted to call those two countries out because these are low convergent states. But basically they have potential, but they're not converting it to anything that can be of true use. All right. Now, those are low convergent states, but We also have high capacity low convergence states. Now, these are the big bad animals of Africa, and I have them as the lions because they just look amazing. They have it all. They have the claws, they have the muscles, they have the look, they have the strut, they have everything, but they're highly inconsistent. And because of that, they are wrecks. These guys are wrecks. These are countries where if they did things well, if they put their head on right, they have the human capital and the resource capital to truly make a change, not only for themselves, but for the region and possibly in some cases the world. Now, these countries, these high capacity, low convergence states, going to be Nigeria. Some will call it the giant of Africa. Nigeria, South Africa, the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea, and Zimbabwe. Nigeria, we all know about that massive population boom, over 200, nearly 300 million people, and growing, growing, growing. You have South Africa, pretty much one of the most advanced countries, if not the most advanced country on the continent, but it has done little, especially since it's changed from apartheid in '94. It has done little to be a spearhead, focusing a lot more on domestic issues as opposed to pushing a barrier, developing its people. It has struggled with its unemployment and basically intra conflict within the country as they figure out a way to balance out their grievances. But this is a country with immense rare materials, pretty much everything except oil. It's extremely diverse in agriculture and geography, great mining, gold, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a country that can truly be reckoned with, but it has failed to measure up to its full potential that it has. The Congo, of course, you can't say anything. It is the heart of sub-Saharan Africa, the DRC, but yeah, it's being bullied around by little diminutive Rwanda because it can't even exert influence within its border. Guinea is interesting. A lot of people forget Guinea because it's small, but Guinea is basically the mouth of a lot of major rivers, including the Niger, which flows through Mali and Nigeria. It has great position and great national harbor and bauxite as well. It is a great resource base that many people overlook because of its small size. And then Zimbabwe, another great resource, a place with palladium. Good luck finding that in the world outside of Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Russia. It has gold as agricultural resources, but they just can't get their finances right, and they can't put the picture together. So all of these countries have phenomenal potential. They are high capacity, and they can do so much. And if they were clicking on all gears, they can truly revolutionize economics inside of Africa. Okay, next. So now we're on high performers, but they're over engineered. Okay, so I call these my mono states. And the reason why I call them mono states is because they are relying on one resource that makes up over 80% of their exports. And the animal I use for them is the cheetah. The cheetah is completely over engineered. It's a beautiful, magnificent animal, but the cheetah can really only hunt small, quick animals, right? I constantly think about one of my favorite animals was extinct is the Siberian tiger, the Siberian cat, and it was full of muscle. It makes a lion look like a sprinter, because it was built in the ice age. It was built for colder weather, so its whole anatomy was built around tackling big, slow game. And as the world became warm, the saber-toothed cat wasn't able to. And as the world became warm, the prey didn't need to be so fat or keep as much blubber, so the prey became a lot more faster, and therefore an animal such as the saber-toothed cat, couldn't adapt to the speed of the prey, and they became extinct. And it's the same thing with the cheetahs. See, the cheetahs are relative now, but temperature degree, 2 or 3 temperature degrees this way or that way can completely wipe out their food source. They have a very thin food chain that they're able to operate in. And if you look at the engineering of a cheetah, they're built for speed, but because of that, they're quite dainty. And just like these countries, because they're so over reliant, over 80% in one material that they export, as the geopolitics or global economy change one way or other, it could crash these economies overnight. They're over engineered due to lack of resource diversity. So the countries I included in this list was Botswana, their resources, diamonds; Gabon, which is oil; Equatorial Guinea, which is oil, Republic of Congo, which is oil, Guinea-Bissau, which is cashew nuts, Sao Tome and Principe, that's going to be like your cocoa beans, which goes into chocolate, and then South Sudan, of course, is oil. As I said, these countries are very highly dependent on one resource export, which makes them very limited in that capacity. So when you read the news about these countries, these resources listed, whether they go this way or that way, it can crash these economies. So the next category I want to put on is going to be my stable builders, what I call the stable builders. Now, this is kind of the most prominent countries in Africa, African countries that I think they're not over relying on one resource. They've, all things considered, been doing the best they could to manage the obstacles, and they have shown steady growth. And they don't need large population surges to do so. They're able to actually develop growth and improve growth within their countries. And the countries that I listed on this are Benin, Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast, Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, Tanzania, or Togo. Now, the animal I associated these countries with was the elephant. And the reason why I did that is because these, just like an elephant is strong and enduring, these countries have shown themselves to be strong and enduring year over year over year, despite the political obstacles, despite the economic headwinds. These are countries that are constantly doubling down, constantly growing, constantly steady improvement. If anything, they probably provide a baseline of a template for economic success. I don't feel as though Africa is necessarily hopping out the box like China or the East Asian tigers. But what I do feel as though there are some serious countries making very deliberate and competent moves to move their country forward, and they will fall into this bucket. The largest of which would be, the most populous of which would be Kenya. But all of these countries, especially Cote d'Ivoire, they're so quiet in their success, and a lot of people don't like to talk about, I guess, African countries that are doing good or when they make competent decisions. But this is where you can start to see those guys at. It's the steady builder bucket. Once again, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, Tanzania, and Togo. As I said, this is a spectrum. All of these guys aren't the same level, you know. Of course, Togo's going to be a little bit on a lower end compared to what a Kenya is doing, etc. But all of these countries are making great strides. They got great geography. They're on the coast, and they're developing their country. Okay, so the next category, I got two more categories left, guys. So the next category is going to be, I call them the high agency state, right? And that's going to be Angola, Ethiopia, and Uganda. And the animal associated with these countries are the leopard because they are dangerous. These countries have shown themselves to be aggressive actors. They have capacity and they're willing to utilize it. Now, Angola probably being the most mature of this, Angola has shown remarkable stability and strength, but Angola has acted aggressively to ensure its interests are secured. And it's done so adroitly, right? We're talking about a country that had Cuban troops defending U.S. oil installations for Exxon. This is high-level diplomacy. This is very impressive, what Angola has been able to do. The sustainability of this organization or of this nation over the years, over the decades, its ability to grow over the decades, has made Angola probably one of the most prominent or developed or advancing African countries on the continent. And they've done so with teeth. There were two Congo wars. This should show you how Angola will adjust to its interests. There were two Congo wars. The first one they were for, which they're actively aggressive in doing so. They weren't friends of Mobutu. And the second one they weren't for, and they shut it down because Rwanda was more the aggressor of that. And the Angolans came in and said, no, you guys are not going to do this on our watch this time. So they have shown themselves to be competent and capable and aggressive, hence the leopard analogy. These guys operate alone in their fear. Angola, that's Southwest Africa, but they will take militaristic, forceful actions at the drop of a needle if they had to, and they would do it competently. Same thing with Ethiopia. Ethiopia is determined to get to the sea. They're growing their force. Prime Minister Ahmed has probably been one of the most capable geopoliticians in Africa, for some times and ensuring his interests, unifying that country, understanding that he's going to need a unified country, a unified nation to be able to project force abroad. But at the same time, he has not been overly aggressive. He could have easily invaded Eritrea, or Somalia or whatnot, or made backdoor back office deals with Somaliland. But he has shown remarkable restraint considering the scale and the need for that goal of Ethiopia, a country of 100 million people, getting access to the sea. And then Uganda, and Uganda's on the lower end of the spectrum, but Uganda has been an aggressive actor as well, guys. Let's not forget, whether we're talking about Idi Amin invading Kenya, Tanzania. Let's not forget Paul Kagame and those troops, those Tutsis, they were harbored and supported by Uganda before they came in and toppled Rwanda, eventually going into the Congo. So Uganda has historically asserted its interest. And if you look at a lot of, whether you're talking about AFRICOM or the African Union, or you're looking at the UN peace missions, Uganda exports soldiers. They're a country that has a big population for the size of what they do. Really, not that many vital or lucrative natural resources. In 2050, though, they're going to be a larger population in Kenya. And once again, Uganda is landlocked. So this is a country that you have to be careful. Like, I always look at the son of Museveni, the president of Uganda. His son's always talking about his imaginary armies invading neighboring countries, sending troops to support Israel, etc. Like, this is a people you can't look past. They're high capacity. They export soldiers. They utilize their people. They believe they have a militaristic leaning. As I said, they export people, not oil or resources. There are plenty of Ugandan peacekeepers, for lack of a better phrase, around the continent. One of the most prominent locations being Somalia. So those countries right there, those are called high agency states because they'll get stuff done at the drop of a dime, and I associate them with the leopard. And then lastly, I want to talk about um, what I would like to call the opportunity zones. These are countries that, it's something there. They're not the biggest countries, but they offer really unique value in either their geography or their resources, or a combination of both. And that's going to include Liberia, Sierra Leone, Cameroon, Central African Republic, and Zambia. And these countries, whether you talk about Sierra Leone and Liberia, which offers prime real estate, and West Africa, a great time zone to line up with Western Europe, whether you're talking finance or getting business done, or whether you're talking about the resources of Cameroon in Central African Republic, which is almost a mini Congo. It's a bevy of natural resources in that part of Africa. And then you have Zambia sitting right there near the Zambezi on that copper belt. Like, these are great countries, but they just need to partner with the right ally to be able to fulfill it, whether it's a market to sell in or capital investment. And I call these countries, the animal associated with these countries is the camel. And the reason why is because they're intentionally valuable. Even if you look at them as something like, why would you want to do anything in Cameroon or Central African Republic? They're intensely valuable. You look at some of these metrics and they're low performing. But if you know what to do with these guys, you can survive harshness, just like a camel will help you survive the harshness of the desert. It may look unimpressive, but its utility is phenomenal. So those are my 9 categories, guys. So I'm glad that you were able to listen. So I'd love to hear your thought on what I think is the geopolitical outlook of Africa, and what you have to say. Please comment below, like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.